Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transforming Today Show. I am your host, Rebecca Weintraub, and I'm an intuition coach. I help people discover, develop, and strengthen their intuition. And today I have the pleasure of having Robyn Holloway. How are you, Robyn?
I'm great, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm doing really well. And viewers, just so you know, Robyn and I have had a long-term relationship coaching together. It's been mutually beneficial, and we've really both grown a lot. It's a testament to the power of coaching, and we're really good friends. So we're really excited to be here with each other today and here with you.
For sure.
So Robyn, let's hop right into it. Tell us on sort of a high level how you help others in your coaching.
So, Rebecca, in my coaching, I help women who have kind of got to a point in their lives where they're a bit stuck. And, maybe a lot of their life has been taking care of others, putting others' needs before their own, and just filling a lot of different roles until you get to that point where maybe you don't know so much anymore who you are, what your wants and desires and dreams are. And you're now kind of hitting a point in your life where you're ready to get back to some of that. And that's where I come in, and I kind of help them figure out what that is and what's missing and how they can add that back into their life and make a solid plan to get there.
That's fantastic. And I know that you've been really successful doing this for yourself. And I'd love for you to just kind of spend some time telling us your own journey and how you arrived at a similar place.
For sure. So I was first interested in coaching probably about 10 years ago. It was something that appealed to me, but I didn't follow through on it back then. It just, I was in that really busy stage of life, and life was taking over. And then I ended up getting sick with breast cancer, and that kind of put my life off the rails and put everything on hold for a while. And I think a lot of it back then, I was that mom who was busy, taking care of the kids, taking care of the family, running everything. And my husband worked late. He traveled a lot. He wasn't around a lot. It was honestly a bit like being a single mom. And you had all those pressures, and it's very, very busy with young children. And I didn't take care of myself. I kind of put myself last, put my needs aside. And you kind of have that idea that you have time in your life to get back to that you'll have all this time. And then that was a real wake-up call for me when I got sick. And it kind of had me take a deep look at my life and how did I get to that point of where I got to, and was so off track from where I once thought I would be. And that's not to say that I didn't enjoy being a mom and taking care of my husband and kids and doing all of that. I just don't think I was able to do it with any kind of balance that allowed me to also, realize that I'm still me. I'm still my own person with my own needs, and that those have to fit in there at some point too. So that, so once I got through that and all the treatments and all that follow-up, that's when I started seriously looking at getting back to the coaching, because it was something that appealed to me. And it really appealed to me to help others sort of maybe make some of those changes in their lives before they have to have that big catastrophic event that prompts those changes.
So first, I just want to say I'm so glad you're doing well now. And in some ways, it'll never be gone, but that period of time in your life is past. And you've entered sort of this new period. And so I'm really curious to know, what was it like when you sort of woke up to the reality that sort of the life you had before had drastically changed?
So that's an interesting question, because of course, becoming a mom, getting married, becoming a mom, there's no instruction manual for that. Nobody tells you what to expect or how to do it, and so to a certain extent, you're just winging it. And of course, there's going to be some changes. And I think that is something that women particularly struggle with, is finding that balance, because they're torn between their own career interests and whatever they may have been doing working pre-kids, you know, the needs of their husband, if their husband has his own career and whatever he's doing to grow his career, the needs of the children, which are very, very immediate and demanding, of course, right? Because they're reliant on us. And then there's the things in your life that you are kind of like the extras that, and those are kind of the first to fall by the wayside, right? Or all those little extra things. And you have to make a really conscious effort to include those in your life and to, well, even realize that you are dropping them, right? Because it can happen so slowly that one day you just kind of, like I said, you look around and you're like, what happened in my life? Like, how did I get here, right? And again, not that you don't want to become the parent or you don't want to love your children, you don't want to do that stuff. Of course you do. It's just finding that way to also include your own needs and desires and that in there as well.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, you know, it's funny because I always thought of like my creative projects as like things on the side. I never really thought something like coaching could actually be my life, right? I always kind of compartmentalized it off as if it were, you know, just these extras. So when you said the word extras, you know, the reality for me is that like coaching and, you know, creativity and the different projects I'm doing and the book I'm writing, like that's actually who I am at the core. And I'm wondering, you know, when you look at that category of extras, how much of that was actually really your identity?
Oh, for sure. I think that's absolutely true, because my identity was never something, this was never what I intended, or and certainly not who I am at my core. If you know me, I'm not the happy homemaker. I'm not the happy housewife getting my identity and my happiness, I guess you could say, from cooking and cleaning and doing all those kinds of things. Lots of women are, and that's great. And it's not like everybody has to do those things, but I think it's like you said, there's these whole other areas of interest for me where I do feel fulfilled, and I have that fulfillment when I'm helping other people and when I'm making a difference and when I'm, you know, really doing that coaching, and that is just for me. That is just what fills me up, right? And that's very different.
So for women who are sort of in this position right now that might feel like, you know, something's missing because they're having to prioritize a certain way, I'd love for them to just identify sort of what that felt like for you. So like when you had to start pushing those extras aside, can you just kind of describe what that felt like to be like, you know, to just kind of have like pieces of who you are removed or maybe set aside?
Yeah, I think for sure it it can be very small things like you talking about your creative process. And so, you know, any of those sort of alone time things where maybe you like to journal or listen to music, or maybe you meditated or you went for a walk by yourself, or any of those kinds of things are often some of the first ones to fall off. Because of course, when you have young children, there's no real such thing as alone time, right? And so, you know, some of those kinds of things fall off, right? And then other things, when you have a demanding schedule between work and kids' commitments and your spouse, then yeah, you're not going out to see your friends. You're not meeting up with your female friends, for example, for a girls' night out, or you're not participating in a book club or some of those other things you might have been doing before, let alone talking about any personal exercise type activities that you used to do. You know, so those are all some examples of things that I find kind of go by the wayside a lot of the time. And just those sort of extra interests and hobbies that are completely optional, that you don't, that there's no reason to do except for your own enjoyment, are the ones that usually go first.
So where was that pain point where when you woke up and you realized that enough things had moved away that were important to you, that pain point of saying, whoa, wait a minute, something's going on here and I don't like it. Like, can you describe like because I assumed that there was sort of like a low to all of that, and then that was a springboard maybe into action. Can you just talk about what happened at that point?
For sure. So, like I said before, it kind of crept up slowly so that you didn't notice. And then one day you kind of have a wake up call. And for me, it kind of happened when I got sick. But even prior to that, I was managing my life, but I wasn't loving my life, right? Like it wasn't working optimally for me, right? I was getting by, I was making everything happen that needed to happen, but it was very overscheduled, very stressed, and then of course, then I got sick, and that was such a huge shock because I wasn't very old, and it was a huge, huge shock. And it kind of was like, how did this happen? How did I get to this point where I thought my life was going fine and that I was fine? And because I think you were sort of shoving everything shoving it all under the rug and pretending it's not there. So that, oh, okay, well, I'm not eating super great all the time. I'm not exercising as much as I need to, but that's okay. I'm doing a little bit. It's all fine, right? And you kind of push it all away rather than deal with it. And I think that's part of it, is that all of a sudden you just become aware of all the different areas of your life that have been impacted, and you take a look around and your satisfaction level in those different areas of your life. And some of them are pretty low, right? Some of them are pretty low compared to what they would have been. And that's, I think, the kind of big pain point, wake up call moment, right?
So what did you start with when you were at that point?
So really I started during my cancer treatment. I joined some group support programs, and I did a retreat. And so those were really helpful. Those were starter steps. And those were sort of things that were 100% just about me and my recovery, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, however you want to put it. That's what I needed for that. And then once I kind of regained my health, then that's when I started looking into, I need to shift my career. I need to move towards doing what I really want to do.
And what was that?
To do the coaching.
Yeah. So I know you and I have talked about in the past, like sort of that comparison that can come up, right? Like for a lot of people, you can look back to a certain point in your life and be like, oh gosh, I wish I was there again. Or you at least, maybe it wasn't perfect, but you want to borrow pieces of that life and have them back again. How much comparison was going on after you got sick and then started getting healthy again when you looked back to, before you got sick?
Yeah, I mean, I think, comparison is a really tricky thing, and it's something that affects a lot of different people, right? And we have talked about that a lot, you and I. And a big part of it is that you kind of, they always say hindsight's 20/20, and you kind of idolize your life. So you think, oh, well, in my early 20s, that was perfect. I had this perfect life. I looked great. Whatever. I exercised all the time. When if you probably actually went back to your early 20s, you probably weren't doing everything you said or thought you were, but you just have these ideas of, sometimes maybe it's the freedom you had back then, or you didn't have as many cares and concerns in the world, or, it could be a number of different things that sort of appeal that you're comparing your life to. And so inevitably you think, well, if only I'd done this or done that, or hadn't quit that job, or hadn't made a move from here to there, where would I have been in my life? Or maybe if I'd gone and done my master's right away, or if I had done my coaching the 10 years ago when I wanted to first do it, right? Where would I be today if I had done that? And how would my path have been different? So for sure, there's those questions that we all ask ourselves all of the time. But, you have to watch, because that can really drive you crazy. You can really drive yourself crazy doing that, because there is honestly no way to know that you wouldn't be at the exact same place and just have taken a slightly different road to get there.
Mm, that's an interesting point of view too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like how you just said that. And so instead of, I know there's a lot of people, I've done this in my life too, where I kind of just like sit and stew in the negativity. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would say like, even like I've had periods of time where I've like been depressed or felt depressed, and there's a certain comfort, even though it feels like crap, like there's still a certain comfort in like in that depression or in those depressive feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's like I think now I see it as like giving myself permission to rest. Whereas before I would feel guilty for like needing a nap, or I would feel guilty for saying no to a commitment that I had committed to. Um, but I think now I put it more in the category of self-care, and I try not to guilt myself over things. And I just try to be gentle with myself. That's a phrase I use all the time. Um, and, you know, when you're sort of in that negative space, you can get comfortable. And, you know, if we're talking coach talk, there's sort of, you know, we've learned in IPEC, there's like level 3, which is kind of just where you kind of get stagnant. And it's, in my opinion, it's like one of the hardest levels because you're somewhat comfortable and you're somewhat uncomfortable, but they kind of cancel each other out to the point of where you just kind of are existing and feel neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's hard to like get ourselves, like, I think that's the hardest level to shift out of, honestly. And so if we're not sort of focusing on the negative and looking back and saying, oh, I wish, and if I had done that, and what if, what's it like to live sort of on the other side of that, where we're bringing in higher energy levels and we're approaching it from a different perspective?
Yeah, so, you know, first I just want to say that I absolutely agree with you that that sort of level 3 energy is a very hard one to get out of, because even though you may notice something's missing from your life, if your life is more or less going okay, lots of people are just, well, status quo, let's not rock the boat, let's just stay where we're at. It's safer than taking the risk or taking the chance of trying something different and it being worse, right? There's always that fear that if we leave what we know and where we are, there are no guarantees that it gets any better. So, you know, with me, and when you're talking about looking at those higher levels and moving to those higher levels, so for me, when I was sick, certainly, obviously, I had a lot of negative time, a lot of depressed time, but I was a mom with 2 young children, and they needed me, and I had to be there for them. So I had to get myself back up out of that. I couldn't stay there because I couldn't function and be the mother I wanted to be if I'm down in that depressed, you know, my life sucks state, right? So I needed to find ways to move myself back up, find those things that gave me energy, you know, and really make a concerted effort to pull myself out of that. And also, like when you were talking about speaking of your body and being tired and whatever, that is one of the things that really happens for me when I was sick, is you really learn to tune in and listen to what your body needs.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're kind of going through that cancer treatment and everything else, everything's exacerbated. So if you don't listen to your body, then you get super duper sick. You don't just get a little rundown, right? So you learn very quickly to kind of cut yourself that slack and not stress if you need a nap, not stress if you need to take a night off, not stress if you need to ask someone else to make dinner or take the kids to their soccer game or whatever it might be. And that was really hard for me. It really was, because I'm not someone that's comfortable asking for help from others. And I think that that is a skill that we all kind of need to learn. And that is a way that when you're surrounding yourself with those other people and that love and that support that comes with it, then that helps buoy you back up to where you need to be.
Yeah. So how much of that lesson or realization did you thread through into your life when you started feeling better and you had your energy back and you were cancer free?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that you look at everything in your life and you kind of evaluate everything in your life, and you look at relationships and friendships and patterns and everything you've got set up, and you kind of evaluate, is it working for me? Is it getting me where I need to go? Is it supporting me in reaching my goals? Or is it creating that negative place that means I fall back down and I head back down in that direction of being depressed and being upset? Or am I surrounding myself with people that support me and are high energy people that you get a lot of energy from being around, and they help you move on and move up? And so that's a big difference, you know, because I think prior to that, you just kind of went through life and did the things you did. I didn't spend quite so much time paying attention to all of those little things, and not only paying attention, but then acting on it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting when we focus in on the details sometimes. You know, it's like if you take a workshop and they remind you about mindfulness and, you know, seeing the small things in life. It's like, you know, the other day I went out and I like just did some very light yoga for a very short amount of time, like in my backyard. And it was like I was lying there in the grass and I could see the ants and I could see the dewdrops. And it's like, you know, that just kind of levels you sometimes, you know, especially when you have like big things going on. It puts a lot of things in perspective. And I think when we're going through these sort of challenging situations and we're going through these big transformations, to be able to be thankful or grateful to those who help us, and then be able to look at that and be so grateful that you too want to serve in some kind of way. It makes a lot of sense that this is why your niche is what it is, because you live this, you understand it, you understand other women who are going through this exact same thing, whether it be cancer, whether it be something else that's sort of, you know, holding them back in some kind of way or creating roadblocks in their life or affecting their health. And so I want to learn more about how you're applying your own journey to how you're helping those in your coaching now.
Yeah, so I think, you know, with my coaching, certainly we kind of start from a point of looking at where the person is now, you know, get a really good idea. Like I was mentioning before, sometimes you don't know where you're at in your life and you think it's going along okay until you kind of take a look and you look at it and you think, okay, so if I'm evaluating my family, I'm evaluating my friendships, I'm evaluating my marriage, I'm evaluating my finances, I'm evaluating my career, my health, whatever it might be, those then can show up sort of where things may be lacking in your life. And it can be different for different people. Sometimes you have a fantastic career and your home life suffers. Sometimes you have a fantastic home life, your career suffers. Sometimes both. And sometimes a whole different area, like you said, like a health challenge. And so really, you know, with my clients, I like to start at that point of sort of seeing where they're at and then talking about where they're trying to get to. And then, of course, making the plan to help them get there. And when we're kind of talking about that vision of where they want to go, I really try with my clients to focus in on how they want to feel when they get there. You know, what is it that they want to feel? Because as you know, if you struggle with something, say you want to lose some weight, and of course we all know that means eat less food or eat different food and exercise more. And maybe you don't want to give up your cheeseburgers for salad, right? Because it doesn't taste as good. But if you focus on that feeling of health and wellness and energy and well-being that you want to have, suddenly the sacrifice of switching the salad for the cheeseburger is not quite the same as if you are only focusing on the negative of, oh, well, then I have to work out more and I have to eat different and blah, blah, blah. So with any type of goal that they're trying to work towards, any vision of where they want to go, I like them to try and hone in on that feeling first and then kind of come from that place when they're planning.
So let's talk about absent positives, because, you know, like we were talking about before, like if you, you know, in my past, I've been like a certain weight that I was like, you know, happy with the number, but I wasn't, you know, with some body image issues I've had, like I never appreciated that weight that I was at, because I was always so focused on trying to get to like a certain number, right? But when I look back now and I'm like, God, I would die to look like that again, right? So I have a point of reference. I have like a present positive in my head that I can go back to say, okay, this is what I'm working towards again, or I'm working towards something similar. For folks who do not have a reference point like that, I call it an absent positive, because it's something that they haven't experienced yet, but they may see other people. Like I always say, like, okay, maybe you've never had the door held open for you, like by someone, you know, walking through, like maybe the person you're dating has never done that for you before, but you've seen other people, you've seen others like open the door for others. So you can only imagine what that might feel like.
Right.
You haven't necessarily experienced that yet, right? So if you have a client that when you're trying to help them feel something that they've never experienced before, how do you help them get to that feeling and hold on to that feeling, and apply that hope that will carry them through the hard times?
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great question because, yeah, when you don't have that reference point and when you are making a big change that you haven't done before in your life, you may not have something like that to anchor yourself to. And I find that part of that is just exploring what all it means to them. Like, what are they imagining will be different about their life? And then if their life looked that way, so if starting tomorrow you could run 10K instead of 5K or whatever it might be, what do you imagine you might feel? Would you feel proud of yourself? Would you feel exuberant? Would you feel accomplished? You know, what are some of those feelings? And you can even start small. Like say you have that goal and say, okay, for the rest of this week, try and swap one thing at your dinner for a vegetable, for example. You know, swap out something, pick whatever it might be, your French fries, your burger, your whatever you want to do, swap it for a vegetable. And then at the end of the week, how do you feel about being able to have done that for yourself, to show up for yourself in that way and to commit to that and to make it through that week? And that starts to build the foundation of where they can feel accomplished and feel successful and feel a taste of what it might be like if they continue down that road of making those changes.
And I'm big on celebration. So
Mm-hmm.
how are you helping your clients celebrate even those like small steps that they're taking?
Oh, for sure. Exactly. And celebration is a very important part that is missing from so many people's lives because they don't recognize it unless it's huge, right? We're all going to celebrate if we lose 20 pounds. Are we going to celebrate if we lost half a pound? And why wouldn't we? Because that half a pound is on the way to the 20 pounds, and it's just as important on the road as any other bit that you lose, or even a week where you maintain your weight and don't lose anything, you know. And so for different people, the celebration looks like different things, but just bringing that awareness to them that celebration is a key part of the process, and to build it in and to allow yourself the permission to celebrate and not put expectations around what you have to have achieved to be worthy of celebrating.
Mm. So when you work with your clients, what would you say the majority of your time, and I know every client is different, but if there is sort of consistency there, what would you say you spend most of your time on with your clients?
With the clients, I think a lot of it is that awareness piece of just sort of being aware of where they're at in their life, the expectations that they have of themselves, expectations that others have of them. Some of that, like you said, being aware, do I celebrate? Don't I celebrate? How do I include that? What are the messages I tell myself around celebration? So just bringing in that awareness in a bunch of different areas, because a lot of people don't consider that in great detail. So it can be really a bit of an eye-opener for them to realize where they truly are at, and some of those areas that they need to work on to change, to really support them in their goals and to going, getting to where they want to go.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that you're kind of a tough cookie with your coaching, and not to scare anyone off, but what I mean by that is Robyn is extremely intuitive. And so when she and I have coached together before, I can't get away with anything with Robyn. And that is like the best coach to have, because if there's some people will say, well, some people hire a coach just because they want to be heard. They need someone to pay attention to them. And that is like a big part of sharing an intimate relationship with someone where you can really express your feelings. That is one side of it, because we all do need to be heard, and we need to be heard in a safe place. But then there's this other side to coaching that is about movement and helping that person move forward. And, the time that we've shared together, I've grown exponentially because you just kind of get right to the point. Like, I can't wiggle out of anything. And I love that about you, because I move forward really fast, even within our sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want you to talk a little bit about sort of your method of coaching and how you actually coach with your clients.
So in my coaching sessions, of course, each of them is going to be different, and it's going to be tailored to the needs of the client. And we start with what they kind of want to work on that session, which may be picking up from the session before, maybe something completely different. It's really they set the agenda for the session. And then as we kind of go through the session, we kind of dig into different areas as it comes up, and as it allows with the client, for their comfort level to dig into some of the things that come up. And then I like to kind of try and help them tie some different areas together. And sometimes it can be a little bit like you're putting a puzzle together, and helping them kind of match up some things that maybe before they didn't see were impacting each other. And because again, like I mentioned before, when you are so busy and you're in that place of overwhelm and your awareness is low in your life, you may not see those connections between, oh, well, I'm not sleeping and I'm not eating well, and then I'm having issues at work with a coworker. You may not see that those are all connected, but when you kind of dig into it a little bit more, you can see that when you're not at your best, and then your energy levels aren't there, and then you have a coworker that kind of triggers you or whatever. If you're not coming from a place of high energy and being where you need to be, well, then of course the interaction with that coworker is going to be worse than it would be otherwise, right? So it's interesting that there's lots of different things that can impact each other that you may not be aware of, and that you may not even be aware are having an impact in your life, that you aren't sleeping as well as you should be, or you're not eating what you should be eating, or that you're worrying about different things, or whatever it might be.
I like that you use the term puzzle, because I actually think of it like that too. And I know a lot of people have different coaching styles, like very different, because we're all different individuals as coaches. But that's how my brain works too when I coach. I do see the fragments as someone's talking. I kind of just like either words or phrases or visuals or feelings, whatever it is, they kind of like jump out. Like, have you ever seen National Treasure? Like, have you seen that movie with Nick Cage? And he's like looking at a document and all of a sudden like these different words are like glowing. Like for me, that's how I experience coaching, and when people are sharing with me after I've asked them a question. And it's like those little pieces are just like kind of lingering in the air. And then for me, it's just the best to like have a question arrive that like ties all those pieces together, that I'm not necessarily saying to them, hey, like, are you recognizing that when you put this, this, and this together, it means this? Like, I never do that. I always just like ask a question that where they can arrive at this significant realization, because as you know, when the answers come from the client, they're so much more powerful than friends or family or whoever like telling them something or giving them advice. So that's that's why I love coaching. Like I love coaching because I almost feel like I'm sort of like this investigator or something, where like I'm working with the client to like almost solve a mystery or something. I don't know if it feels like that to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe the magic of coaching. That is kind of that intangible part that is hard to explain to people that haven't experienced the coaching. And I think a big part of it is that as a coach, I'm not your mom, I'm not your sister, I'm not your best friend. So I don't have an invested interest in your story. I don't know all your history. I don't have a preconceived idea of who you are or what you're doing. And so I think when that allows us, like you said, to see those little pieces that pop up and draw some of those connections that maybe they're not seeing because they're too close to it, and there's, the special people in their life aren't seeing either because they're too close to it. Or as we learned in IPEC, with your own lens, your own perspective on things, those other people are bringing that to the table. And so when we as coaches are able to take ourselves out of the picture, and we're not in that story with the client, then that allows sort of that magic of coaching to happen for sure.
Yeah. And I was telling a coach maybe like a year ago about something that happened to me, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe not that long, but something happened to me where I was just simply expressing my feelings about it. And I was sort of floored that it even happened, and I didn't know how I felt about it. And there was resentment there, and there was sadness there and everything. And she simply said to me, wow, it sounds like you felt as though you lost a lot of credibility. And when she, like, I would never find that word to kind of sum up everything that was going on. But when she said that particular word, that was what I was feeling. I felt like all my credibility was taken away from me, like in one fell swoop. And it just took that one word coming out of her mouth for me to just like bring everything that I was feeling that felt fragmented and all over the place. It just brought everything together, and it made me feel like I wasn't crazy, and it made me feel like so much better. Just be able to not label it, but just be able to like tie it with a bow when it was so messy before. And so sometimes we can say something that others really aren't feeling or hearing or experiencing in a concise way. And we might talk for 20 minutes when it really is just one word sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know when those breakthroughs are going to happen, right? And I think, like you said, a big part of it is that as a coach, we can kind of see some of those patterns coming up and see some of those connections that maybe the person themselves can't see and can't put together. And we can help them come to that realization of what's really going on in their lives, and help them see that, and just bring that awareness to them, bring that knowledge to them, and then move forward with that. And I mean, speaking of you and intuition, obviously you're an intuition coach, and coaching with you was a true benefit to me in developing my intuition. And a lot of what you're talking about there with those kind of hits or those words that come to you is a very intuitive thing, right? That's a very intuitive part of coaching, where some of it just comes to you in the course of the session, and it's not, because we're not sitting there following a script or following a list of things to do or say. A lot of it, the session goes the way the session goes, right? So, and that magic comes in. So, and that's the amazing part about coaching.
Yeah, let's talk. So for me, it comes down to just trusting, right? Like I trust myself, I trust my outer power. And when I have inner and outer power coming together and working in a way where I can just be and I can just kind of like exist in those coaching sessions, like that's when I am clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient. Like I see things, I hear things, especially questions. Like a lot of the questions I ask are not like ones that my brain is making up. They just are there. They're sort of given to me, whether that's sort of a higher level consciousness of my own brain, or whether that's like a higher power or that inner and outer working together to create that, it just arrives. And then there's that sense of feeling and understanding your client without, like you were saying earlier, without stepping inside the story or stepping inside their box. And that way you can really understand how they're feeling, so you can not just acknowledge and validate them, but you can also you can also understand just their perspective, so that so that the questions you're asking are really relevant. Because a lot of times, like questions may not be so relevant sometimes. And I think that's where like a disconnect can come, whether it's a therapist or even a friend or a family member. Like if that question is not relevant and does not sit right in that pocket, it's like you're going to feel that sort of dissonance with the question. And that's why I'm so grateful that when I'm healthy and I'm taking care of myself, it's like that intuitive part is just so easy. It just exists. The hard part is making sure I'm eating correctly, making sure I'm getting enough sleep, like taking care of myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. And recognizing the importance of that, because we all do it. We all let little things slide. And sometimes you think, oh, well, it's just this week that I'm a little short on sleep. I'll make it up next week, but you never really do. And then maybe it's something else and you're not eating as well, or then you're not exercising. And it can all be quite, it can accumulate quite quickly. And another part of it, that you're kind of mentioning too and touching on, and that we've talked about, is just being aware of that environment you're in and the environment that supports you in how you function. That could be you're an introverted person and you need time to yourself. It could be an extroverted person, you need time with other people. There's all those kinds of considerations as well when you're talking of your overall health and well-being and how you function optimally, right? How you function optimally, which then of course affects that lens or that perspective you have about everything that's happening in your day-to-day life and your interactions and your relationships, and you're coming at everything from a better place when you are solid in who you are and what you need, and you're taking care of yourself. Then that allows you truly, like they say, then you can overflow and help others, right? You fill yourself up first with all of that, and then everything that overflows, then you're able to help others in your life as well.
So what's that like when you start seeing your clients taking care of themselves a little bit more or a lot more than they were? What's that like to witness?
That's amazing. It's amazing to witness, because I'm not sure if you find the same with your clients, but often at the beginning, when they're in that part of that awareness and they're aware that they're not doing it, there's a bit of resistance, a bit of an idea that, well, I just can't do that. I don't have the time. There's no way I can fit that in. So there's no way I can change this, right? Because clearly if I could have, I would have already done it. I haven't been able to, so therefore I never can. And then you make a tiny suggestion, or they agree to try something small, and some little changes start happening. And then a few more little changes start happening. Then maybe you try a little something else. And it's just amazing to see how that changes from that idea of that resistance of, this is just my life. It is what it is. I can't do anything different, to, oh, wow, look at the amazing difference this made by committing to, like you said, 10 minutes of gratitude once a week, maybe a yoga session once a month, a dinner with a friend every 3 months, whatever it has to be, whatever timeline it has to be, but recognizing some of those things that are missing from your life that you have put aside, that you have let go by the wayside, and really understanding the importance that they have to your overall well-being and adding them back in a way that works for you.
I love how you just said that. That's right. Because a lot of us can reach a point where we just like, you know, like I reached a meltdown like maybe a month ago or something. I was doing way too much and started suffering in different areas. In fact, every single area started suffering. And I knew I didn't want it to be like that. And so I had to let go of certain things. Like I was writing a book and I had to put it down. I was taking this course and I had to say to the instructor, I'm sorry, like I just cannot fit this in right now. It's not good for my health. And I let go of the course at that time. Right. And so I had to just kind of get back to basics and getting myself healthy. And now I'm at the point where I'm starting to fold in things, but I'm more deliberate about it and I'm more intentional about it, because I know with my personality, I'm like, sure, yes, inspiration, creativity, let's do it. And like before I know it, like the world is crashing down on me, and they could be all great things, but it's still too much. And I like how you said, we once we realize what's missing, we don't just like full charge, like add them back in. We have to like you're saying, even if it's one dinner every 3 months, like one dinner, and yeah, we have to be very careful about how we balance our time and balance our lives and balance our health. I mean, balance is like a huge word for me in my life. Like balance means a lot to me. It's one of sort of my top 3 values for sure. And I think it sounds like that's something that you really try to instill in your clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you make a very important point, and it's one that, I talk about a lot with my clients as well, is that a lot of the time, it isn't just a matter of giving up negative things, because it's quite easy to look around in your life and see the things that, oh, I'm eating crappy food, or I'm not getting enough sleep, or I'm not exercising enough. But when you're starting to talk about some of those other demands, when they're all positive things and they're all things you want to have in your life. Yes, I want to speak at 20 different things a month. I want to have 100 clients. I want to write a book. I want to run a training series. None of those are negative things. Those are all things that you would love to do. But reality, like you said, you can't fit them all in, and I think that's when people can struggle a bit, and it can kind of take over without them realizing, because it isn't something they think of as negative for their life. They think of it as good things they're adding to their life. And so therefore, how can it be wrong to add it? And they miss those signs of that overwhelm, or they miss those signs of maybe some building resentment, or, some stress, some anxiety, all of that is, and maybe they shove it to the wayside as well, because, hey, I really, really want to do all these things. And I really want to see all these friends and be part of all these activities and go to all these events. But at a certain point, that, like you said, does affect your overall health and well-being just as much as the lack of sleep or the poor eating or the poor exercise habits, right?
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, because that's where I am right now, and it's funny because it doesn't last long. Like I got myself to a point where I was like, oh, this feels comfortable. I don't really have anything at night that I'm committed to. I can put in full days at work and focus on work, which should be, outside of Jason and sort of basic health needs and stuff like that. Like, it's what pays the bills, obviously. So I have to like really focus on doing a great job at work. And then, you know, the clients that I have, like making sure I'm giving quality time to them. And it was sort of like this nice little pocket where like when I stripped all the other extras, which by the way were self-imposed, right? Like I got to this space where like everything felt good. Everything felt like it was in its right place. And then we decided to move back to Baltimore. Right? So now it's trying to fit in the two realtors I'm working with and trying to fit in house showings while still trying to work during the day. And, you know, everything that comes, calling movers and, you know, scheduling all the logistics and thinking about when we're going to pack and when we're going to do this or that. And, you know, what I've learned is just to accept and be grateful for those times when we really feel the balance. And I was talking to a very good friend of mine. She's this very wise woman who's a mentor to me and has been for the last 5 years. And she said to me the other day, you know, Becca, you know, I just don't feel like anything's going on. I don't feel like I have any spice in my life, right? And she's like in her 70s. So when she tells me that, I'm just like, it makes me chuckle because like she wants to be like doing stuff and out there and everything. And I just said, you know, like sometimes it's good just to like be in nothingness. You know, sometimes we just need to sit in nothing for a while, and it helps us appreciate when we can do something special or that something special, you know. And so I, I think appreciating when we strip something out and being proud of ourselves for being able to look at something like you said that's like a positive thing but isn't always doing positive things for us.
Right.
Like we have to look at that age-old question, you know, what is it doing for us versus what is it doing to us? And if it's doing negative things to us, we have to be willing to slow down, take a step back, and really evaluate if it's something that we need in our life at that time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, one of the things you touched on that people don't always realize is that it isn't always stuff that others are piling on our plate. Some of it is self-imposed. It is us overcommitting. And, you know, that can come from a wide variety of reasons, from the positive to the negative, the positive of, oh, these are all great and wonderful things and great and wonderful people, and I want to fit it all in, to the negative of those expectations that you have of yourself or others have of you that, well, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing that. And so I think that's where that awareness really comes in, of looking at where are you in your life and what are some of those things that you're committing to, and where do they fit into the bigger picture of where you're going and how you want to feel and how you want to show up each day for yourself, for everyone in your life, and what's having an impact on that. Because like you said, it doesn't have to mean that it's a negative, but it might be something you have to temporarily take off your plate while you focus in a different area, you know, because you might have overextended yourself. And in doing so, none of the things that you're working on are getting your full attention or your full energy or your full, you know, presence, right? And so that isn't really very helpful either when you try and just fit it all in rather than focusing maybe on a couple and then adding something back in down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, if we're talking sort of in the big picture, kind of looping back around, you know, when you get to this point where you are completely full and then something happens, whether it's a health issue or something just in your life happens where like, boom, like everything falls down. It's actually a beautiful exercise to deliberately fold back in, because I think a lot of people just try to pick everything back up again. And what'll probably happen is same thing, like some other roadblock will come and life is telling you, look, slow down, look, like you need to do less. And so I like that you look at that with your clients, because it's like, you get a sense of who they are and what they can not handle in their life, but how to balance all the things that they're interested in, those want tos, even if they sometimes feel like a need to, right? But I like how you do that with them, and how you kind of take your own transformation of what you learned, and you're now creating this life for yourself that has, you know, you're able to fold in that coaching in a way where this is what you're doing. This is like what you want to do. You're making it happen. You've built your business. You have your clients. You get to coach. Like there's nothing better than coaching, in my opinion. Well, maybe one thing, but there's like nothing better than coaching, right? So it's like, to have built this life for yourself, what is it like to now sort of sit in all of this and all that you've created, and celebrate yourself so that you have this balance in your life where you're doing the things that you absolutely want to do, and you're doing them in a balanced way?
Yeah, so, you know, it really is, like I mentioned before, quite fulfilling when you can find that thing in your life that gives you what you're looking for, that energy, that connection, that interaction with others, the helping others, being of service to others, and really integrating that into the rest of your life and making your life work to support what you want to do in your life, you know? And I'm not going to pretend and say that I'm perfect and that I have this balance thing all figured out, because it's still something that, of course, you struggle with, because, as you said, there's things that come up all the time. And your life isn't just sort of like this and you get it figured out and nothing changes. You know, that's a bit unrealistic to think that it's going to be that way. But I think being knocked all the way down, where sort of everything was taken out of my life, and then making a real conscious effort of what to bring back into my life, and really being intentional, you know, like you were saying, intentional about what you spend your time on, what you bring into your life. And then learning those boundaries, you know, putting some boundaries in place, learning to say no, learning to ask for help, sort of all of that other stuff that you have to put in place so that you can build a life that works the way you want it to work. And that is going to look different for everybody. You know, some people thrive on being extremely busy and having every minute of their day scheduled. Others, that would be way too much. You know, they need the downtime. So it's really a wide spectrum of what that can look like, and it's very individual, but I certainly work with my clients to try and help find what that looks like for them personally.
Yeah, so I know that there are people watching right now that want that so desperately, and they see that you can absolutely help them. How do they get in contact with you, Robyn?
So they can go to my website. It's robynhollowaycoaching.com. And they can book a discovery call with me, and that's sort of where we get started from. And that's about a 45-minute call where we just kind of see where they're at, what they're looking for, what they might think they'd like to do, and I can go over some of the coaching packages with them, and then we can go forward with our relationship from there.
I love it. And you told me before the show that you were working on something very exciting, right? Tell me about it.
Yes, so I am planning on launching intensives, and those are kind of going to be like a 7-ish hour, either in-person or online session. And those are for people who really know they're ready to make that big move forward, and they really want to get at it. And having that intensive and that time together really allows us to dig into everything that's going on and really come up with a strong plan to move forward in their lives with whatever goal it is that they're trying to get to. And so that focus and just sort of really zoning in and digging deep helps them move forward in leaps and bounds, right? And it's kind of like the same path you might have in a coaching, an ongoing coaching session. You just get it done a lot faster.
Yeah, and I know it's going to be a lot deeper too, because I know your coaching style, and Robyn doesn't fool around, guys. But Robyn gets right in there, and you know, with every question, you're like growing. I mean, absolutely incredible. So I encourage you all to reach out to Robyn because she's the real deal. Like she's got a very special gift. She's very talented. Coaching is she is coaching. So definitely reach out to Robyn. And Robyn, I want to thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure to get, I think it's been maybe like 3 weeks or something or so that we've gotten together. So this was wonderful spending time with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Becca. Thank you for your kind words and for having me on your show. I've really appreciated it. And yeah, it's nice to connect again for sure. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank our viewers. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us. We've talked a lot today about balance and being intentional about how we want to live our lives and who we want to have in our lives and what we want to have in our lives and what we want to focus on. So for those of you out there who just kind of feel like everything's fragmented or a little bit messy right now, just know that there's a way through coaching to kind of get a handle on what's going on and be sort of more in control, whether that's with your inner power and outer power working together. There's an opportunity there to kind of fit in that pocket and feel that intuitive flow that helps you live your life. So that's really what we're talking about here today. We mentioned intuition a few times, but both for Robyn and me, like intuition powers what we do and it powers our lives. So I encourage you guys to explore coaching and definitely reach out to Robyn. So that's it for us, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.